I don't do this. Good morning. It's pretty daunting to follow all the fantastic speakers and all the interaction that you folks have made. I want to applaud each and every one of you for participating in the conference. This morning's panel, I mean, Puck, last night I went home sick thinking I got to follow that guy. Thank you all for what you do. Thank you for really stimulating me in the last couple of days. There's a lot of takeaways. I've been jotting down stuff so I can bring to my colleagues back in Sacramento and say, what the hell are we doing? You know, we've got to do this. So this is a leadership. It's important for me to focus this year on adaptation. There's been a lot that as I get into the slides, but you know, California's efforts to actually build resiliency and to move, address those impacts that we all know of. We all got great knowledge of climate change and extreme weather, but trying to put those into language where people in our communities will understand it. I'd like to go through these slides quickly and then get to your questions, which I know are plentiful. I want to go over the extreme weather and climate change, adaptation planning that's going across the United States, and what we've done at different levels of government in California, as well as what my goals are and what I hope will be some of your goals, because all I'm doing is copying you guys in making the state prepared or start implementing our climate adaptation ideas, and also having us serve as a leader in the world. As Jake said, I'm started off with the let me put this over here. I'm now the crazy thing about state politics is last year I was in charge of the Judiciary Committee, all the problems of your courts. I was the main guy trying to get money from the governor, and bingo, I get elected to the Senate, and now I'm environmental quality. So all the climate action discussions that are going on, the governor's plans, I was conducting that hearing on the injection wells that you brought up about when we had Dogger there, and it was daunting that we've had 4 years that we know of the information of putting this wastewater or used water, processed water, into these wells, and then that morning before we had the hearing, Cal EPA or Dogger and US EPA reached the consensus that we'll continue to do that for 2 more years. With no legislative authority, nothing. That's just how we're going to resolve our problems. So I'll talk about that later. That's another thing. Okay, so God, I can't hardly read this. Just as we've been talking about how our communities are going to change, how we have to move together regionally and locally and statewide on these impacts. And this is I didn't put this together. This is the Center of Disease Control, and the science community has broad consensus. And one of the things I want to, if we leave this morning with one reassurance, is that we need to engage the science community and make sure that the science is driving the changes. We know about the human impacts from greenhouse gas emissions. We know about the carbon dioxide, we know about the diseases, we know about the respiratory effects, and this broad band of effects it's going to have. The sea level rising if you're on the coast, the extreme heat, the disease vectors. I was surprised that I don't want to say the D word because this is our new 21st century water use, but the amount of amount of mosquitoes and other vectors that are having an effect on our communities, especially in the inland or all over the state. New diseases that are coming in because the temperatures are warmer, and they don't need that much water to sit in. I was sort of back in the 70s thinking that they need big pools and that use tires lying around so the mosquitoes could climb in there, and it's actually really not so. They're pesky little varmints, and they can survive and spread, and the impact it's going to have on all of us is profound. These natural, the public health challenges that we're going to have and the effect on environmental quality is going to hit the poorest. It shouldn't be a surprise to any of us. The people who are less equipped to handle it are more vulnerable, are going to feel those effects. They're already marginalized, and the elderly. We talk about the multiplier effect. That's going to exacerbate the problems that already exist, and we can have a whole discussion about our inadequate public health responses. So as these disadvantaged communities are going to be hit harder, and they're going to be less able to adapt to the changes, it's going to, and they're going to have higher incidence of respiratory diseases and cholera and these chronic diseases that go on. We're going to have, as many of the speakers already talked about, I think Rick Cole put it grandly, was that there's no more money coming up. We're going to have the 2007 budget. You know, we're going to have less resources to respond. As other speakers have alluded to, all these impacts are interconnected. That's why we have this graph here, is to show you that it's inextricably linked together, and everything's converging on us. So California, our impacts from climate change obviously are being felt most immediately with the drought, and the increased temperatures that are going to plague us in the upcoming summer. The challenges that we have with the West Nile virus and all these others sometimes misses. Local officials don't pick up on that because we're so worried about our built communities and our zoning. So those things all set the table for what's coming up. So this is the importance of adaptation, and I think it's again, I stole it from the Canadians, so it's nothing new, but we're focusing on climate change, and we've been a leader in mitigation. AB 32, reducing our greenhouse gas emissions. It's a sexy thing for us to serve as models for other folks. One of the challenges that we have is we only produce 1% of greenhouse gases. California produces 1% of greenhouse gases, so it's baseball season. So even if we hit a home run, the governor's got his executive order to reduce greenhouse gases by 50%, right? And then 80%. So if we reduce them by 80%, now we're at 99.2, right? So that's part of the challenge I have and other leaders have in the state, is because all the money that we have, or at least a lot of the money, is going towards mitigation. That's what we want to have all those sexy things about reducing greenhouse gases and getting to alternative fuels and the cafes. It goes on. The harder thing is the adaptation part. Some of it's overlapping, and this is grand. But some of the adaptation policies that you folks are going to be looking to, and that you're going to need to make the hard choices, don't overlap. I mean, you've got controlled fire burns. I mean, that's going to create more greenhouse gases short term. There's no dough for that. But that may be an adaptation policy in some county or some region that is really what you need to do. So mitigation is a critical component, and I'm not trying to discount it, but the strategies that we have to really dig deep dig deep on is going to be the adaptation policies and some of the things that don't cross over. It's, if we did not, you know this, if we did nothing right now, or if we, no, we did nothing right now, the changes, the inevitable changes of the climate change are going to hit us no matter what we do, right? We heard some of the numbers early on that the greenhouse gas emissions, the changes that we've made, are going to get us beyond 33%. We're trying to figure out how we get to that platinum level, you know, on the next as we move forward. But both mitigation and adaptation are important for us to solve our long-term problems. And the overall approach in dealing with climate change has been, I guess, and in its infant stages. Let me get to this. So here's the climate change planning across the United States, and you can see lead by example, how some states are doing. Evidently, Idaho and Missouri are not doing much by leading by example. But the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency says that there's 32 states now have completed climate action plans. Sounds pretty good. These plans often focus on greenhouse gas reductions and less commonly on the adaptation actions that they need to take, including improving their resiliency and those impacts that are going to occur from extreme weather that hits us. And increasingly, a larger discussion is happening at local levels. I mean, you guys are the chosen few. You know, the Visalia, Red Bluff, some other cities are not here. They'll never be here with the local government commission. But we have, as you can see, the US EPA says in addition to climate action plans, a lot of these states are creating their inventories of greenhouse gas emissions and leading by example. And operations are encouraging clean energy and addressing climate changes to various degrees. So things are going on. So now let's look at the state and local adaptation planning. Again, this is a map that we stole from somebody, the Center for Climate and Energy Solutions, but gives you an overall view. And when you're looking at adaptation specifically, you can see from this map from Climate and Energy Solutions, that about 20 states across the US have either completed the adaptation plan or have one in place, while 7 others have recommended an adaptation plan in a broader climate action sanario that they have. And you can see that a majority of the states developing these plans are on the coast. You know, that great big red swatch in the middle of the country isn't doing anything. Okay, so what's the problem? Man, it seems everybody's got a climate action plan. We've all embedded them into our general plan. What's the problem? And this figure sort of shows you what the problem is. No implementation, no monitoring or evaluation. So we've spent a lot of time, this is according to EcoAdopt. It's a nonprofit, focuses on building and supporting adaptation strategies across governments. And they recently looked at the state of adaptation throughout the US. And you can see they found little activity across the level of government when it comes to implementation and monitoring of adaptation efforts across. So we've got great plans. We're looking at capacity. We've got, as some speakers have said, we take on these positions in our new jobs and we find out everything's been studied to death, but few states are enacting adaptation legislation, right? And according to Energy and Environment Legislation Database from the National Conference of State Legislators, since 2010, there have been just 9 states that have enacted any legislation regarding adaptation. So the opportunities for improvement are grand when it comes to trying to build resiliency. So let's look at California. okay? State, region. We've made some good progress, obviously, because we're California, in at least beginning to talk about adaptation. Much has been done, as the previous slide shows, to indicate to preparation of what the impacts are going to be, but we haven't made that big step. Now, the Climate Action Team was created by the Governor Schwarzenegger in 2005, and that's an executive order that comprised of 17 members from state agencies, boards, and departments, headed by the Secretary of Cal EPA. Now, the team is broadly tasked with coordinating the state's overall climate strategy, including the greenhouse gas reduction and adaptation on one side. We have another state agency, the Strategic Growth Council, that oversees sustainable planning. Now, they were created in 2008, and they assist you guys, the state and the local governments, in sustainable community planning, and also helping everybody meet the AB 32 goals about integrating their adaptation plans into different projects. And also they dole out the money, some of the grants that come out. That's why they're important to this discussion. So we have these assessments, we have guidance documents, and the state is supposed to be working to produce multiple climate change assessment reports, as well as resource and guidance documentation. And these include the adaptation, safeguarding California, reducing climate risk. There's been an update. The third version of it just got released last year in 2014. I'm sure you guys are familiar with it. They're already working on the fourth version of what needs to be done. And they break it down in different sectors for California. Regionally, multiple regional coordinating bodies have been working, are a very important component of building resiliency in California, and bridges that work, and resources that we can take advantage of in the state with adaptation needs and efforts of local governments and organizations. About 70% of cities and counties are now showing significant changes in reducing greenhouse gases at the local level. And this is part of your good work and part of the work of engaging folks and developing programs that will reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. Those same local governments, and you guys are the leaders of that, are beginning to look at the adaptation work that, as a previous slide showed, where it intersects between the mitigation goals, because that's where the funds are available with the cap and trade in AB 32. And that's what the state is offering right now as far as implementing it. So, here's some recommendations. It's great. We've made some progress on the state and regional and local level in adaptation planning, but now a lot needs to be done with coordinating and implementing the projects that we have. To better understand the current state of adaptation projects and policy, California needs to have better coordination of the state policies with the regional and the local government. Just last month, we had our first hearing for the Senate Environmental Quality, where we had 4 secretaries that came in from the state. There was EPA, Rodriguez from the EPA, Health and Human Services, Agriculture, and Resources, John Laird. They were all there, and they're telling us about the executive order that the Schwarzenegger had and Jerry Brown had, and how they're coordinating and talking with each other with all the programs. Well, that's all hunky-dory until we had ARCA come up and the local government commissions in the second panel, and they said, well, they invite us to the one planning party that they have, but we didn't even know that this was going on with these different levels between the state's agencies. So that's a big hocus pocus problem that we're trying to solve. So the commitment that I've made in the adaptation field is that we're going to have a series of 4 regional hearings. We're going to have one in the Bay Area, one down in the Valley somewhere, and one down in Southern California to help collect information, find out from you folks what's not working, what you don't know, and how we have this grand plan. We also, at the hearing, we heard an independent, we had the Little Hoover Commission, and they just recently came out with a report, was it October or something? I mean, this is the Little Hoover Commission, and they're there testifying that, saying, we need another like cabinet level agency or greater coordination with Cal EPA. I'm thinking, Little Hoover Commission is saying we need more government on this adaptation policy. But it's their recommendations basically broadly match what local and regional governments were saying with at the hearing, that there should be some enhancement of existing state entity or creation of a new state organization to establish and share best available science and procedures for adaptation with local and regional entities. Sounds like exactly what we need. The entity should also have an independent science advisory board. So we all know here intuitively that it should be science-driven, and it should include the views, get a load of this, it should include the views of local governments and businesses and the private sector throughout the process. And they also felt that the state government at all levels should incorporate climate risk assessments into everyday public planning and governance. So this is what the Hoover Commission says. So it's the idea that you embed your adaptation policy into the DMV, into not only the parks and the health, but EDD. That becomes part of our idea. So the overall need is for more state focus and leadership on adaptation. Now, we all know that the UN is having their Paris discussion or opportunity to reach a protocol in December. I've been tasked with this, with the jurisdiction of EQ is obviously to hold hearings on the governor's proposal and legislation from Pro Temp De Leon on setting our next round of goals. What I'd like to do also is to include adaptation as at the same level as mitigation. Now that's pretty controversial, because most of us want, like I said, the sexy thing is to reduce greenhouse gases. That's what gets you on Fox News Network. It's not implementing an adaptation policy of how we're going to change. We just heard from the water people about saving dough, and then at least coordinating, telling the farmers, really, it's not unlimited well growing. We're going to regulate you, and now move into those tough, some of the ugly decisions that you folks have to make. I mean, Jake sings my praise. My hope is that somehow the state becomes a backstop for you when you're implementing some of these adaptation policies, to say, well, the state is making us do this. Really, we really have to do it, which is a sea change from how local government commission has operated in the last 26 years. Through there's California's guiding principles complements what the commission recommendations were from the Little Hoover. And through the Safeguarding California report, the state has guiding principles that complement these recommendations. The first is using the best available science to identify risk and adaptation strategies, which should evolve with new science. So again, that's the other little thing, is to make sure that we keep changing these adaptation policies as we get better data about where the rain is falling, where these mosquitoes are coming in, what the sea level rising in. I don't know who I was talking to, somebody on the Coastal Commission. You know, who would have known? The public lands are determined by the medium tide. So you got the high tide, you got the low tide. You take the medium tide and you go up 100 feet, and that's the public land. So imagine the litigation, potential litigation, when sea level rises and all of a sudden your $25 million home is state land. I mean, we haven't even got there yet. That little problem. We have to involve all relevant stakeholders. I mean, I'm just tippy-toeing in here, but after listening to Puck, I want to do the big picture and big strategic goal is that we need to, on these oversight hearings, and as I take this legislation, I've got another piece of legislation, because that's what the chair of environmental quality has, is opportunities to build, to make sure that you folks and the regional planners are embedded with the state as we go into orchestrating the implementation of our adaptation policy. I mean, you look at the Dutch, which would probably be a good trip. We should all go to Holland, but they're what, 20 feet below sea level or some crazy thing, and they built a series of dikes and levees, and it cost $1 billion a mile for them to do that. So we don't have that dough. You guys don't have that dough. So those decisions that have to be made, which are going to be ugly local land use decisions, you need some backup. So we want to really have those partnerships that we talk about with the state as we go in and we create a climate action team. I didn't fully appreciate this, but I know you do, is that, when you have an executive order, and Schwarzenegger's got an executive order, and the governor's and Brown's got an executive order about we're going to reduce greenhouse gases in 2050 and 80%, blah, blah, blah. That's only as good as the governor's there. And that governor's order can change with a new governor. And, the nutty things happen with, new elections, and the lieutenant governor, somebody dies, and next thing we know is some governor just says, well, I'm just going to vacate those things. I'm not a believer in this. It sounds crazy. So the idea is to make it in statute, to create that climate action team in statute, to say the parameters of how it's going to work, and to give the legislature and you folks some more skin in the game. Where the strategies, you guys know this, sometimes I feel like I'm like in kindergarten here. The strategies to reduce climate risk have to be coordinated wherever possible. So we penny pinch with the reduction of greenhouse gases locally and nationally. But we have to make sure that we have some little slice for adaptation on its own, because you guys deserve it. The governor and the legislature this year have shown some commitment to continuing building California's strong policies towards mitigation, and you'll hear about it. And again, one of my roles is to make sure that the rising stars, the governor has stuff to talk about as they get ready for Paris. So we have new targets. The U.S. isn't going to do it. It's you guys. It's California. So we need to have new policies. And it'll roll out this year for our next targets, what that means. Again, I'm trying to sneak in adaptation on the same level as we go to 2050, so that you guys can go back to your planners and your water districts, and you can say, okay, this is, what are we going to do, as we achieve efficiencies in buildings, and we look at resiliency. There's not enough money right now to take care of it. I'm engaged in adaptation. I've sort of scratched it out as my little effort this year with the greenhouse gas reduction policies. The legislation is one opportunity. I know Rich Gordon from the peninsula has another climate adaptation bill. He looks at the Strategic Growth Council, sort of names them as the go-to state agency since they're handing it out the money. You know, we'll work through that. I mean, the idea is we want to bring the adaptation into our regular dialogue. This bill will, as I said, codifies the climate action team in statute and tasks the team with identifying unavoidable climate action impacts. Just tell it like it is. This is the unavoidable impacts. This is what we're going to have to deal with. This is what we're going to have to pay for. Coordinate the mitigation with the adaptation plans. Coordinate the efficient use of the state resources and the programs and the funds that we give out to that. And again, moving beyond just cap and trade, you know, but having that embedded in all the funding that we do. All the funding that we do, we start talking to EDT and, you know, DMV and all the other resources, all the other agencies, and say, before you do any build, or Caltrans, for God's sakes, and saying adaptation has got to be in the forefront of how you're spending your money going forward in the discussion. Actually, I guess I did learn something from Puck yesterday. That's what a Marine can do. To help the climate action team in these efforts, an additional goal is to engage independent scientists, as well as regional and local leaders like you guys, to provide ongoing input and assistance, and to be an integral part of these developing resiliency strategies. So again, redefining, you know, on the implementation stage, really have a partnership that means something. What's missing, I think, when we looked at this area is that coordinated and comprehensive effort. We have some things, lots of studies as we saw before, but not that coordinated and comprehensive action by the state of California to approach the extreme weather that we're all going to have. So then, this is Mission Peak in Fremont, so I had to, okay, we know what the challenge is, okay, and they're there, and it's that time for a dramatic change. It's time for, as you guys have been inspired by the other speakers this week, is think big. Don't be afraid to think too big, right? You can always, you know, I got 8 years in the state Senate, and all that can happen is they say, oh, he thought too big, and things didn't change. All right, Uncle, I'm done. I don't think I need to say this, but, you know, stay engaged. You guys, hell, it's 11 o'clock on a Sunday. You're up here in the Tudor room. You are engaged. You know, your hard work. My website on the committee will let you know when I come into your area. If you have ideas on who I'm missing in the discussion, you know, when we talk, obviously we're going to go to I think it's the University of California Merced. We're going to want to have the forest people in there, you know, because again, our whole policy is on fire suppression. You know, we could spend an hour talking why that's a nutty thing, and you know, we know our environmental friends, many of us give $35 a year to those groups. You know, some of them don't want to cut down one tree. They don't want to have any tree. So we got to sort through that. The risks and responses to climate change have to be considered in light of all the topics that we've been discussing today, and throughout the conference, and how we work together with the meager bit of money that we have with the state to ensure that our communities are resilient, and how we can help you guys on some of the discussions that you have to make when it's that come to Jesus discussion about we don't have money to sea level rising to save everything on the peninsula or everything in Hayward, California I represent. You know, we've got enough dough for the airports, and we got, what, 28 sewage treatment plants. And you're talking about, you know, breaking up those, all the silos in the water. It's all gravity driven. It's coming from the hills into the lowest part. It's go around the Bay Area, they're all there, and it's great that some of them are doing tertiary treatment, and San Jose's got the state-of-the-art water treatment plant, but as that sea level rises and the sea intrusion goes in, that's gazillions of dollars that are at risk. So thank you for being so polite, and I'm happy to take any questions.